gremlin? What do you mean? I've never heard any lore about them from the elders.
Tove and Yurei stood upon a grassy hill in the middle of nowhere, only surrounded by open sky and an ocean of grass. The wind blasted past them, which caused the blades of grass to dance with glee. Several clouds floated in the sky, and they casted large shadows upon the land. The hill they stood upon was one of the largest in the area, and it allowed for them to overlook the entire area for at least a mile in all directions. There weren't any human cities around for many miles, so the land was unspoiled. Tove smiled as he drew in a deep breath. He had to savor the sweet serenity, for it wouldn't last, especially with what he and Yurei were there to do. Tove had a large sack in his hand.
I'm not sure exactly. I've never seen one, or even heard of them until the elders summoned us for this mission. I suppose we're about to find out what they are like, firsthand. Based on what the elders indicated once upon a time, the gremlins were a special creation of the Alicorni, an experiment or something. If we can secure their help in the upcoming conflict, then we'll be that much stronger against the humans.
Did the elders say how we're supposed to secure their help? And how do we even know the items are gonna work?
Well, why don't we just try the items they gave us and wait? If it fails, then you and I get to enjoy a long overdue respite from responsibility.
At least it's a pretty day. So, I guess we should start then?
Yes, let's begin. The sooner we do, the sooner we will know whether or not this was all worth the effort to construct the magical items.
Tove settled among the grass and then pulled out several items from the bag. The items were the following: a shiny red bead the size of a grape, an ivory horn with carvings around the mouthpiece and at the end of the opening, and a handheld topaz with several etched runes in the sides. Tove tossed the red bead on the ground, and then a wild crimson flash engulfed the grass where the bead struck. Crimson liquid spread over a large area of the grass, and the plant life started to dissolve. As soon as the grass had been completely melted away, shapes started to rise from the now barren dirt. A large tent, a large wooden box with the word food etched on the lid, a magical campfire, and a pair of logs in front of the campfire formed where the grass once stood.
Wow! That's so amazing! I never get tired of seeing the shamans work. I wish I would have been selected to follow their path.
Well, Squirt, if you would have become a shaman instead of a warrior, you wouldn't have been allowed to leave the villages. The world is much too dangerous to risk losing those who invoke the ancient magic of the Alicorni.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. If they provide us a tent, I guess they anticipate us having to stay for a long while.
Yes, I anticipate us having to be here for several days, to be honest.
Tove moved over to one of the logs and sat down beside the fire. The warmth from the flames kissed at his skin, and it wasn't all that uncomfortable. Yurei sat on the other log, and she watched Tove with excited eyes. Her attention kept diverting from him to the horn. Tove glanced down at it, and then gestured it toward his daughter.
Would you like to blow it?
Really? Do you mean it?
Tove wiggled the horn a little, and Yurei took it in her grasp. She brought the horn up to her lips, but then gave her father one last, delighted expression. Yurei inhaled and then blew hard on the mouthpiece. A warbled note danced on the air, and it rippled with visible tremors that darkened the air past the opening of the horn. The wind stopped blowing, and the grass became quite still. Echoes from the horn's note sailed across the open plain.
So, that's it then?
Yes. Now we wait.
Unlike the lesser water kami, greater water kami require much more fluid thinking and spiritual calm to attract their attention. Minds riddled with anxiousness or unease are often ignored by the greater water kami spirits, for they are the most skittish and elusive of their elemental breed. Calm your mind and be as undisturbed as a lake's surface. Soothe the restlessness of your spirit, and you will be able to call forth a greater water kami to hear your request.
Flara stopped reading for the moment, and she allowed her gaze to go unfocused. Water kami were her weakest element, despite her relative understanding and mastery of the arcane subject of kami summoning. For her, the easiest to summon were earth, wood, and wind kamis, as earth kami required resolute fortitude of the mind. Wood kami delighted in hunger and thirst for personal growth, and wind kami savored a quickness of wit. Flara had those qualities in spades. Fire kami responded well to those with passionate spirits, which wasn't a problem for her. She was passionate about learning and lore, so it was fairly simple to conjure their kind. While metal kami summoning wasn't her weakest, it definitely was her least favorite. Water kami summoning was something she was desperately trying to improve upon, though, for it directly correlated to her most glaring flaw. Most of the time, Flara writhed under the immense unease of having to be around other people. While she loved being around her two best friends, Flara usually avoided other people whenever she could. People just made her so self-conscious, and it was that sort of trembling that ruined her delicate sense of inner peace. Thanks Saito that she didn't actually have the same tensions with talking with Kami. With Kami, Flara didn't need to have entire conversations saturated with useless small talk. Flara was no good at small talk, as she didn't really do much other than study. Had it not been for her best friend's tendencies related to making her open up, then her time at the University of Magic would have been much more solitary. While Flara enjoyed her alone time, she also relished being with them. A funny thought occurred to her. Before Flara made friends with Apisa and Rayko, she couldn't even summon a lesser water kami. She had almost given up on the whole arcane subject had it not been for their encouragement and insight into how to relax. For a long time, Flara had started to make great strides with opening up. But then a certain Onistan showed up to haunt her steps by lingering in her shadow. Nori wasn't a bad guy, and she knew he didn't want to cause her any more anxiety. Still, his presence was one that affected her on a deeper level. Ever since he showed up, she had not been able to summon any water kami greater than a medium-level spirit. Flara had to get her lost ground back. She just had to. Just as she was about to start reading once more, Apisa and Rayko waltzed back into the K-Caven. Rayko sat across from Flara, and Apisa sat beside her. They both beamed at her with wide-eyed expressions.
Oh my gosh, Flara, you're never going to guess what we heard.
Oh, you know I'll never guess it. So why don't you please just tell me?
It is quite strange, darling. You know how the four of us paid a little visit to a certain warehouse?
Yes, what about it? Did Dr. Kauzisti not make it out of Jedi safely?
Oh no, the good doctor is fine. I went to see them off this morning before classes. No, the strangeness is related to the Karaba clan.
What about them?
Get this. The entire Karaba clan was wiped out. No one really knows what happened, but people all over the city are talking about how crazy the carnage was.
Crazy? What do you mean?
Well, those who went in to investigate the manor reported that many of the thugs who were employed by the clan either had missing limbs or decapitated heads, or they had crushed body parts.
Wait, did you say crushed body parts?
Yeah, like squashed heads, broken bones and such.
Flara rubbed her chin with her fingers, and she gave a slight frown.
What is it, darling?
Well, I'm not sure about the thugs who were sliced apart. Although I would suspect that was done with a sword or something. What strikes me as interesting is how some of the thugs had massive wounds caused by a crushing force. When we fought with Mr. Nori, I noticed how he left the bodies of those he fought.
Rayko's brow furrowed for a moment, and she and Apisa glanced at one another.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Do you think Mr. Nori took on all those thugs by himself?
Well, he was reckless enough to take on those trolls alone, so it would not be out of the realm of possibility that he should attempt to do so with the Karaba clan as well. However, based on the information from the manor, someone else fought with him.
I wonder who fought with him. Well, actually, the more important question is, why did he do it, if in fact he was the one who slaughtered all those people?
Well, I do remember one of the thugs got away. Maybe that was the reason.
Well, he is outside playing his lute. We could always ask him to come inside and inquire about his potential involvement.
Flara winced a little, and she averted her eyes. Why was she so nervous around him? He was a Chutar, and she had grown up around them in the palace. Then again, bitter memories of uncaring eyes falling on her every move flashed in her mind's eye. As a child who felt keenly aware of the crushing obligation of her lineage, Flara hated being under their watchful gazes. Apisa placed a hand on Flara's.
Don't worry. Rayko and I will do all the talking, okay?
I don't deserve friends like you.
You are being silly, my dear. Of course you deserve us, and we deserve you. Now, Apisa, if you would be so kind as to fetch our pesky musician friend, we will be able to clear up this rather intriguing mystery.
Apisa left the table and disappeared for only a moment. She returned within a couple of minutes with Nori in tow. From the corner of Flara's eye, she noticed something different about the Onistan today. Firstly, there were more nicks on the wood of his tetsubo. It gleamed a little as if it had been freshly cleaned, too. That wasn't too out of the ordinary, as they had a battle in the warehouse, but still, it seemed a little off. Also, in addition to Nori's massive weapon and his loot case, he carried a small brown sack as well. Something was inside it. Nori pulled up a chair and sat at the end of the table. To Nori's credit, he didn't stare directly at Flara. She hated when people did that. Instead, he let his gaze float around between Rayko and Apisa.
So, Apisa said you wanted to see me?
Yes, we had a couple of questions for you. To be frank, did you go anywhere else after we parted ways last night?
Nori cracked an ever so slightly amused smirk on his face, and for a brief moment, he and Flara's eyes met.
I won't confirm nor deny where I was last night. I assume you all heard about what happened with the Karaba clan.
Yes, we did. So, let's say hypothetically you were involved. Why would you have done it?
Hypothetically. Hypothetically, the thug who escaped the warehouse told their boss about 3 mages and 1 Onistan who freed one of the people they were planning on killing. In order to protect the serenity and safety of 3 of those involved, an Onistan hypothetically stormed the base with a stranger who also had a vested interest in getting inside. Together, they wiped out each and every thug as well as the boss. No one knows those 3 mages were ever involved. Hypothetically.
I am quite curious. How is it that you are so unbothered by all this wanton death?
During my training as a musician, my superiors made sure we were all accustomed to taking life, if need be. Well, in this instance, I was protecting you all, and also ensuring some secrets were kept. I'm not unbothered. Saito knows I meditate daily and pray for forgiveness over such things.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry then.
Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, this reminds me, I have a present for Miss Flara.
What? For me?
Yes, well, please don't ask where I got it. But I saw this and thought you'd like it. Consider it a peace offering.
Flara winced as Nori reached into the bag. What could he have gotten her? She really hated presents from people, especially people she didn't really like. Nori pulled out a black wooden box with elaborate carvings and script on the outside. Flara's eyes opened wider. Apisa made an audible "wow" sound, and Rayko simply stared at it with obvious confusion. As Nori set the box down on the table, a great and prickly excitement blossomed in Flara's heart. What could it be? The script on the box was definitely in a sort of ancient arcane cipher. That much Flara knew right away. There didn't appear to be any noticeable seam for the box to open either.
I'm pretty sure this is a puzzle box. Some of the panels slide, but I have no idea how it works. Something is inside, though.
The prickling inside Flara's heart, well, it exploded into a vast field of pricklings. A wild hunger roared to life inside her.
Oh no. Tell me you didn't just say puzzle box.
He did.
Is that bad? What's wrong with a puzzle box?
Flara's mind buzzed with heightened activity. The little symbols and script on the cover of the box at first seemed like pretty decoration, but they all had a meaning. She started to reach for the box, but then looked at Nori straight in the eyes.
Is this really for me? I can have it to solve on my own?
Well, yes, of course, if you'd like it.
Thank you.
Flara ran her fingers across the box and slowly identified which tiles moved, which tiles were buttons, and which were simply script. She picked it up and tilted it around. Something did thump around the inside of it, and whatever it was for Flara to discover. She grinned as wide as possible, and she kept studying the exterior of the box. She heard her friends talking, and yet didn't quite hear what they were saying.
Well, looks like she's already hooked. You really messed up this time, big guy.
How? What did I do wrong? It sure looks like Flara's enjoying herself. I mean, look at that smile. I'm just trying to make things more comfortable between us so that all of this isn't as unbearable. Is that so wrong?
It is not your fault. You did not know. But you see, our dear Flara gets... well, she gets obsessed with solving arcane and academic problems. She's probably not even listening to us right now. The only thing that matters now is that.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I was just trying to be nice.
Well, at the very least, she most likely appreciates the gesture. So good job.
Flara flipped the box on the right side and then smiled. She pressed two of the tiles on the top, one on the left side of the box, and one on the bottom of the box. She slid one of the panels, and as she did, a small little button plopped out.
Oh, it didn't do that when I slid that part.
Well, of course it did not, darling. Flara is a genius.
Flara pressed the button, and something inside the box clicked.
1 lockdown, 4 more to go.
Damn. It had been days since they first arrived in this vast ocean of grass. At first, it was a pleasant escape from the grim reminder of human domination. However, after such a prolonged time of nothing but grass, boredom started to stab into Tov's mind. Yurei laid in the grass, and the warm sunlight basked into both of them. Drowsiness clutched at Tove just as fiercely, but there had to be at least one of them awake, just in case these mysterious gremlins ever showed their faces. Did they even have faces? The sounds of the wind blasting all around them, coupled with the brushing of the tall grass, added to Tov's drowsiness. It would be such an easy thing to just doze off as well. Suddenly, a terrible stench tickled the inside of Tov's nose, and his addled mind started to sharpen. Instinctively, he drew in a deep breath and savored more of the odor. It had a musky and acidic quality to it, almost like donkey piss. Tove shook his head as he opened his eyes wider. The grassy sea appeared unchanged, although Tove's gut pulsated with angry consistency. Once more, the wind blew past him. The smell intensified.
Yurei, get up.
Huh? What? Are they here? Ew! What died?
I think it may be our gremlins.
I think you may be right, Father. Look!
Yurei held up the handheld gem and it pulsated with frequent hums and bright flashes. As the stink grew stronger, so did the frequency of the pulses. Still, the grass appeared just as still as it had been before. Tove's skin crawled as he let his gaze roam. Tove conjured energy into his hand and formed an energy sword.
We know you're here. Show yourselves.
Dozens of figures stood up from the grass as if appearing out of nowhere. Each of the figures had pale, sickly brownish skin, with elongated, pointed ears, mouths full of sharp teeth, and large bulbous eyes. Their skin looked bumpy and slick, which almost shimmered in the sunlight. Most of the creatures were thin, gangly, and were clearly naked. Everything was exposed for the world to see. Several of the creatures, however, were 3 times the size of others. The smaller of the creatures were about Tove's size, perhaps a little shorter. In comparison, the larger creatures were the size of very large male humans. The female gremlins had large torsos, massive muscular arms, and colorful patterns on their faces. They also had extremely long eyelashes where the smaller ones did not. One of the massive creatures approached Tove and Yurei's campsite. Yurei summoned her magic bow, and she knocked an arrow in its energy string.
Who are you? How did you summon us, and for what purpose?
I am of the Vren. I serve the ancient gods and goddesses, the Alicorni. Your people were created by one of the Alicorni over 2,000 years ago. They need your service now.
Lies! The gremlins have always existed ever since the beginning of time! No one made us. We serve no one!
That is not an acceptable answer. The Alicorni goddess who created you needs your aid, and you will fall in line.
Will we? How dare you try and command us, little morsel? You are nothing but food for us to eat!
The large gremlin roared, and several other gremlins of similar size combined their voices in a chorus of rage. 4 such creatures rushed Tove and Yurei, while 3 others lingered among the other smaller gremlin crowds. Rather than attack, the smaller gremlins waved about and howled with laughter and jeering. Tove and Yurei summoned their wings, and they hopped into the air above the charging creatures. Yurei's hand moved rapidly, and magenta-colored arrows of light dug into one of the monster's eyes and throat. It screamed out in pain, and it pawed at its wounds. Tove soared down and landed between 2 of the larger creatures. He spun around and sliced open one of their stomachs, and then turned to face the other. However, it punched him in the chest and sent him to the grass. As its massive arm hit him, he felt an internal crack resonate his entire body. At the last moment, Tove rolled out of the way of the gremlin whose stomach he opened. It collapsed on the ground where he laid, its eyes rolling back to the back of its head. Tove got to his feet, but breathing in and out became much less pleasant. He dipped under another one of the gremlin's larger arms. He sidestepped, and then cleaved its massive arm off its body. The gremlin howled loudly, but it lumbered toward him with even more rage. A whoosh of air whisked past Tove's face, and he hopped back once more to avoid being struck in the face. From the corner of his eye, he saw that one of the gremlins lay dead on the ground near the campfire, a dozen arrows poking out of its body. 2 other gremlins kept launching their super long tongues at Yurei, trying to ensnare her. Rather than fire back, she kept trying to bob and weave around them. Tove flew up into the air and then landed on top of one of the gremlins' heads. As it reached up for him, Tove did a backflip and landed behind it. He whirled around and slashed at the monster's spine. The energy blade seared through the flesh, and the gremlin fell to the ground. One of the nasty tongues wrapped around Yurei's ankle, but she summoned an energy sword and sliced herself free. Still, Yurei's face contorted in disgust. Another large gremlin pounced at Tove, but he dodged and weaved away from it. However, when he got too close to one of the smaller gremlins, they tried to grab and hold Tove in place. His blade cut through their limbs, which caused the other smaller ones to keep their distance. The large gremlin stepped up to Tove once more, and it punched at him with fury and speed. He began parrying the fists with his blade, and burn marks covered the flesh of the monster's arms. Tove slid in closer during a break in the attack and then rammed the full length of his sword through the monster's chin. As Tove kicked off the monster from his sword, he observed Yurei pulling her twin short swords from another gremlin's eyes. A deep and heavy silence fell over the grass, and each of the smaller gremlins gazed at Tove and Yurei with wider eyes. There had to have been over 100 or so, maybe even more. One of the larger gremlins stood amidst the crowd, and she frowned at the pair of them.
Do you want to fight too? Well, do you?
No, I do not wish that. I will listen to what you have to say, though I am far too young to know anything about 2,000 years ago. We gremlins only live for 50 years, you see.
Wow, only 50 years? Then you really would have no idea about where you all came from.
The large gremlin walked over to where Tove and Yurei stood.
We do not care where we come from. We only care about strength and survival. You are clearly the strongest. And now, since I am the last adult female, I am the alpha female. We will listen to you.
Wait, you're a female? Were all these aggressive ones females?
Yes, female gremlins are big. Because we must be to bear all the male and future females. The little gremlins are the males. Females are smart and lead. Males are stupid. They fight and they breed. Nothing more. Nothing less.
Well, I suppose it's good that you decided not to fight us. Will you fall in line and serve the Alicorni?
Yes, we will fall in line. What will you and your masters have us do?
You will be summoned again with this same horn, and when you do, you will be asked to fight and kill as many humans as you can. Until then, you only have one job to do.
And what is that, little master?
Eat, sleep, and breed.
Come on. Just one more. One more look.
Flara stared at the box, bleary-eyed and haggard to say the least. A small candle burned in her room, and she sat on the bed, with the nearly completed puzzle box in her lap. Weariness pressed down upon her shoulders and her eyelids, and her lower back groaned through constantly sitting in the same position. She bit her lip as she flipped the box over again. The sun had set many hours ago, and to be honest, it would probably rise in a couple of hours. Nori had given her the box days ago, and over that time, Flara had managed to correctly bypass several of the locks. A sudden hysterical notion came to mind. A lesser intelligent person would have just summoned a woodkami to open the box, but Flara couldn't do that. Doing so meant accepting the fact that she wasn't smart enough to solve the box's challenges. That simply wouldn't do. She was so close that she could taste it. She just needed to figure out one last mechanism. Flara had already slid all of the available panels, tested the buttons, used the hidden keys stored in the compartments, and even matched up symbols. What was she missing? Once more, she ran her fingers over the surface of the box, both on the top and the bottom. Maybe something new had been unlocked, and she could find it through touch. To her dismay, nothing appeared out of place. She tried pulling on the sliding panels to see if any of them came off, and still they did not yield. Flara let out a small groan as she slumped down a little and closed her eyes. She sniffed. A very slight fragrance, delicately sweet, filled her nostrils. She opened her eyes wider and sniffed again. What was that? Flara glanced around the room, but there wasn't any food sources or drinks that would cause that sort of aroma. She bent down to where she had been slouching before, and she sniffed again. Flara brought the box up to her nose, and she began sniffing it. While it was a little strange, she noticed the smell was indeed coming from the box. In fact, it came from a tiny little tile on the side of the left side of the box. Flara held up the tile to the light, and she noticed that hidden in the curve of the script was a tiny little hole. A quick sniff revealed that to be the source of the smell. Flara licked her lips and pressed in on the tile. It didn't budge. She tried turning it with her thumb, but still that didn't work either. The smell was definitely new. Flara pressed in on one of the tiles beside the smelling tile, and it sank ever so slightly. Her eyes widened. It wiggled a little, and she actually slid it in a quarter of its length toward the smelling tile. Her mind sparked, and she did the same to the other 3 adjacent tiles to it. As soon as she slid the last tile in, an audible click resounded in the silence of the room. The bottom of the box popped open. Flara looked inside. A small, ancient scroll rested inside, with its paper perfectly preserved inside the airtight box. Flara blinked away the weariness and slowly slid the scroll out. She neatly unrolled it and then examined what had been scrawled upon its surface. A small map of the western half of Corinne was drawn on the scroll. Flara recognized where Jedi was, as well as the river and Nagasi, the next closest town along the river headed east. A small dot was indicated on the map on the peninsula to the northeast of Jedi. The words Mao Fun were written beside the dot. Tears welled in Flara's eyes, and she let out a half-drenched, exhausted laugh. The challenges of the puzzle box were totally worth it, for now she knew something that had been lost to history. Flara rolled up the scroll and placed it in her top drawer. She would have to show the girls what she earned as a prize for defeating the puzzle box. And while they may not be as excited as Flara was right now, they would surely appreciate it immensely. That could wait until tomorrow, though. She needed sleep. Morning classes would come too soon for Flara's liking, although she loved learning. She moved to the candle and blew it out.